Hung was born into a poor family in a remote countryside. His parents get hired all year round. Yet they still struggled to make ends meet. Their house was nothing more than an old thatched hut, leaking everywhere on rainy days. That's why his mother must place buckets to catch the water. Despite the hardships, Hung was eager to learn. He firmly believed that education was the only way to change his life. One afternoon, after returning from work, Hung's mother handed him a newly bought notebook, purchased with her hard-earned savings. Study hard. Okay, we may be poor, but I believe in you. His mother gently patted his head, her voice full of hope. Yes, Mom. I promise to study well so I can help you in the future. Hung clutched the notebook tightly, his eyes shining with determination. But going to school was never easy for Hung. Every morning, he had to walk more than 5 kilometers to get to school. On rainy days, his clothes would be drenched, and his worn-out sandals caked with mud. Despite these struggles, he attentively listened to lessons and carefully took notes. Whenever he lacked textbooks, he borrowed from his friends and copied them by hand, studying late into the night under the dim oil lamp. Nothing is impossible as long as I don't give up, he reminded himself whenever he felt exhausted. One day, his teacher called him to the board to solve a difficult math problem. Though he had never seen this type of question before, he carefully thought it through and found a solution. His teacher nodded approvingly and smiled. Very good, Hung. You have potential. Keep up the hard work. Yes, sir. I won't give up. Hung beamed, his heart filled with motivation. Hung knew that the road ahead was long, but he never once considered giving up. Years later, he passed the entrance exam to a prestigious university in the city. However, the joy was short-lived as financial worries quickly weighed on him. To cover his tuition fees, he took on multiple jobs, working as a waiter, handing out flyers, and even working as a construction worker. He would finish his shift at midnight, exhausted, yet still pushed himself to study. One time, while serving food at a faux restaurant, he overheard his classmates discussing their summer vacation plans. Let's go to A with Grave LT this summer. It'll be a great way to relax after exams. Yeah, great idea. Hung, are you coming? Hung forced a smile and shook his head. I still have to work part-time. As he watched his friends leave, his heart ached. My life is different from theirs. But it's okay. Hardship is only temporary. I must keep going, every night. No matter how tired he was, Hung persevered in his studies. He held on to Thomas Edison's words, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Through relentless effort, he graduated with top honors and quickly secured a job at a major company. At first, he was assigned difficult tasks and was sometimes scolded by his boss. One evening, after completing a pile of reports, Hung stayed late to learn new skills. A colleague approached him and patted his shoulder. Hung, you're working too hard. Do you need a break? Thanks. But I want to keep pushing myself so I can reach a higher position in the future. Hung smiled, his eyes filled with determination. After years of perseverance, Hung was promoted to a managerial position. Yet, he knew this was not the end of his journey. 10 years later, he became the director of a successful startup. No longer the poor boy he once was, he still carried the same burning passion in his heart. One day, while visiting his hometown, he saw a group of underprivileged children studying under a streetlight due to a lack of electricity at home. The sight reminded him of his past. Hung decided to take action. He established a scholarship fund to support poor students, built a free library, and provided books and school supplies for children in his village. On the library's opening day, a shy little boy approached him. "Brother Hung, I want to be like you someday, but my family is too poor." Hung smiled and patted the boy's head. "As long as you have dreams and never give up, nothing is impossible." He believed that success was not just about achieving personal goals but also about helping others rise. Looking at the children's hopeful eyes, he knew that his journey was far from over. He recalled Winston Churchill's words, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And so, Hung, the young man who once emerged from poverty, continued his path. Not just for himself, but for all those who shared his dreams of rising above their circumstances. Nam was born into extreme poverty. His home was nothing more than a dilapidated shack at the edge of the village. Its roof made of old, decayed leaves that let rainwater pour through the cracks whenever it rained. The dirt floor was always muddy, and deep cracks ran along the earthen walls, like scars left by the heavy burden of poverty. His father passed away early, leaving Nam's mother to bear the entire family burden alone. She worked tirelessly as a hired laborer during the day and spent her nights hunched over, mending old clothes to save every penny. Their meals often consisted of only boiled vegetables and fish sauce. Sometimes, his mother had to go hungry so Nam could eat. But Nam didn't understand his mother's hardships. He was frustrated with their impoverished life and decided to give up on his future. While his friends diligently attended school, he often skipped class to wander around with a group of idle village youths. Why bother going to school? Everyone in this village is poor, no matter how much they study. Nam snapped when his mother tried to advise him. "But if you don't study, how will you ever escape poverty?" she asked gently. Her eyes filled with worry. "Escape? How? The poor stay poor." He scoffed and stormed out. In the following days, Nam sank deeper into a meaningless lifestyle. He spent his time gambling, playing video games, and sometimes even stealing small items to fund his habits. His teachers punished him more and more frequently for skipping school. But Nam didn't care. "I'm not losing anything. I'm just living the way I want," he told himself, ignoring his mother's sorrowful gaze whenever he returned home late. One freezing winter day, while he was joking around with his friends by the riverbank, a neighbor rushed over, panic-stricken. "Nam, come home now. Your mother had an accident." Nam felt his heart stop. He rushed home. What he saw shattered him. His mother lay motionless on their rickety bamboo bed, her legs swollen and covered in bruises, her face scratched and battered. "Mom, what happened?" Nam cried, his voice trembling. The neighbor explained that his mother had fallen while carrying a heavy bundle of firewood, but since they had no money for medical treatment, she could only endure the pain in silence. At that moment, Nam realized how wrong he had been. He looked at his mother's frail hands, covered in thick calluses from years of hard labor. She had sacrificed everything to provide for him, yet he had thrown away her efforts for meaningless distractions. "What have I done? My mother gave her whole life for me, and all I've done is run away." Nam berated himself, guilt overwhelming him. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong," he sobbed, clutching her hand. His mother looked at him, her voice weak yet full of love. "My son, being poor is not a crime, but if you continue like this, You will be stuck in the same place forever. That night, Nam couldn't sleep. He recalled the saying, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He finally understood that the only way to change his life was to work harder than anyone else. Nam returned to school. But it was far from easy. After years of neglecting his studies, he was severely behind. His classmates laughed at him, and even his teachers doubted whether he could catch up. But Nam didn't care. He studied day and night, copied old lessons, sought help from friends, and even collected second-hand books from older students. Many nights, he stayed up late by the dim glow of an oil lamp, his eyes burning from exhaustion as he struggled to memorize math formulas. He reminded himself of Aristotle's words, "It is not where you start that matters, but how far you go." Gradually, his efforts bore fruit. After relentless determination, Nam finally passed the entrance exam to a prestigious university. Years later, Nam became the director of a large company. But he never forgot the orphans who had no one to rely on, children who faced even greater hardships than he had. Determined to make a difference, he established a shelter for orphaned children. More than just a place of refuge, it was a center where children could receive an education and develop skills to build independent lives. On the opening day of the center, a 10-year-old orphan timidly tugged at Nam's sleeve. His eyes filled with hope. "Brother Nam, I want to be successful like you someday, but I have no parents. Who will help me?" Nam knelt down, placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder, and smiled. "I once had nothing, too. But as long as you believe in yourself and never give up, nothing is impossible." As he watched the children laughing and learning at the center, Nam felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that success wasn't just about achieving his own dreams, it was about lifting others up as well. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And Nam had truly changed, not just for himself, but for the hundreds of orphaned children who now had a chance to rise from poverty, just as he once had.